R.J. Rummel Freedom's Principles 29 Chapter 5 The Self-Esteem Principle A man's true merit is not hard to find, but each man's secret standard in his mind, that casting weight pride adds to emptiness, this, who can gratify? For who can guess? Alexander Pope, Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot. We do not act just for any purpose, any goal, intentions are not arbitrary. Rather, we strive for completion, for betterment, for our own self-ideal. That is, we seek self-esteem. Our self-ideal is self-respect, admiration by others, virtuousness as each of us defines it. It is holding our head high. This, we all strive toward achieving or enhancing. The self-esteem principle is we strive for self-esteem. What improves one individual's self-esteem will not necessarily better others. The specific goals linked to self-esteem differ greatly among individuals. One's esteem may be tied to being a good mate. For others, it may be seeing their children through college, making $1 million, getting a PhD, writing a bestseller, or even murdering someone. This last possibility should drive home the point that esteem is personal, often group-oriented, and not defined by the morality of outsiders. A gang member's esteem, for example, is often linked to his reputation and his gang. And if murdering an old man without showing any emotion raises him in their esteem, then it will also help his own. If we can infer how an individual assesses their self-esteem, whether by honesty, independence, duty, devotion, power, or wealth, and a particular means most related to their self-esteem, such as being a successful businessman, good parent, respected scientist, effective politician, good warrior, we can well explain their present behavior, and predict how they are likely to behave in certain situations. To assert that self-esteem is the central goal means that other goals take a back seat while self-esteem drives our interests and integrates our mental field. Our needs are satisfied depending on how they relate to self-esteem, our interests are filtered through our self-esteem. A prisoner under torture may refuse to divulge secrets, enduring pain, ignoring some of his needs and interests, even endangering his survival. All this to maintain his self-esteem as he sees it, by protecting his country or cause. Further examples abound. A student may stay up all night studying for an examination, denying the need for food and sleep, just to move one step closer to a medical degree. An official working in a corrupt government agency may expose the wrongdoing of his colleagues, even though ostracism and harassment will follow, because he could not live with himself if he remained silent. A revolutionary may give up security, career, and family to fight a repressive regime. An army officer, whose esteem is linked to faithfully carrying out orders and achieving high rank, may receive an order to machine gun a cluster of men and women huddled against a wall and execute the order without hesitation. One individual's esteem may be another's evil. 4 elements are involved in the self-esteem principle: superego, ego, self-will. The first is the superego sentiment, the collection of attitudes we call morality. It is the internalized parent that tells us what we should and should not do. The superego is closely connected to self-esteem. For self-enhancement and completion, our self-ideal depends on our moral view of the world and our self. The second element is our ego, or the organizing, administering aspect of our relationships and our interaction with the outside world. Our ego relates our perception to behavior, means to goals, superego to self-esteem. It carries out such functions as thinking over or solving a problem, judging alternative means, assessing the truth. And it has a complementary role to the superego, like that of executive to a board of directors, or the American president to the Supreme Court. Our needs may stimulate a desire to go somewhere, our activated interests may define the somewhere and how to get there, and our superego may approve, guide, and evaluate the trip. But it is our ego that actually manages the trip. Our ego's integration and organization of our perception, needs, interests, sentiments, superego, and self-esteem, enable us to function as normal human beings, to solve our problems in a reasonable, satisfactory way, to have a fair harmony with our environment, to meet challenges, and to satisfy our needs. It is people who have such a poor integration of these elements, whose perceptions, superego, needs, and self-sentiment, are so poorly organized that they cannot resolve problems and satisfy needs, that we call insane or mentally ill. Two final elements in the self-esteem principle are our self and will. Our self is the I, the me we intuit. It is our total personality, our integrated needs, attitudes, and sentiments. It is our feeling of inward continuity and identity, our felt future-oriented movement towards self-actualization and the maintenance and enhancement of our self-esteem. It is the gestalt unifying our ego, superego, and self-sentiment, a whole forming a moving, mental equilibrium. This simply means that our consciousness forms a mental unity, an integrated whole which is our continuous, flowing, feeling thinking acting self. The theme, which gives most meaning to this whole and movement, is the future to which our self is striving, which is actualizing and enhancing our self-esteem. Finally, there is the will, which is a facet of this self. Will defines our ability to make conscious choices and bring ourselves to act on them. Needs stimulate interests. Interests define which behavior will achieve what goals in order to satisfy specific needs. Will is the power to bring ourself to behave as interests dictate. This does not mean that we will so behave, however, for we may be prevented from doing so. We may have the will to go to work in bitter cold weather and icy streets, but our car may not start. We may have gathered the will to ask our boss for a raise, but we may have been fired just before we could act. In any case, everyone has experienced R.J. Rummel Freedom's Principles 32 Willpower. It takes will to stop an undesirable habit, such as smoking, to leave a warm bed on a frigid morning, to tell another individual off, or to take physical risks. In summary, as shown in Figure 5.1, our organized self and the inner, combined superego and self-sentiment, filter our stimulated needs. They determine which will be satisfied, which absorbed, which opposed. Absorbed needs are those whose energy can be employed in our pursuit of major goals and partially satisfied by them. Our need for security may be absorbed in a drive for power. Our need for self-assertion may help our performance in athletic competition or writing a blog. Our need for others may be partially satisfied through an altruistic involvement in a charity drive or politics, among other things. Self-esteem is, then, a central concept in understanding how and why human beings behave the way they do. But it is also a much misunderstood concept, as the following observations will make clear. Misunderstanding 1. Many people, such as the poor or uneducated, lack clear goals and an idea of self-esteem. Not so. The poor or uneducated are mentally no different from anyone else. They may differ only in what gives them self-esteem. This may be a reputation as a good family person, church-goer, fisherman, farmer, ladies' man, mother, bowler, or having the best car, knowing all the football statistics, or being able to down the most beers. That higher status people may not esteem these goals does not make them less central to the underdogs of society. Misunderstanding 2. Criminals have no morality or self-respect. The problem here is that people tend to project onto others what they consider moral or good. They find it difficult to accept that another individual acting immorally can be moral in his own eyes. Yet each culture has its own morality, each subculture its own variation, each family its own values. Leaving the aged to die alone in the cold is immoral in the American culture, but moral in some traditional Eskimo cultures. Abortion is considered moral by many American Protestants, immoral by most Catholics. Sodomy is immoral in the dominant American culture, while moral within certain subcultures. Moreover, criminals have a morality and sense of respect and self-esteem no less than non-criminals. Often, the morality and esteem is integrated within the criminal's gang or family. Such movies as The Godfather have dramatized the close ties within the mafia families, the strong sense of what is right and wrong, and the importance of respect to its members. Criminals operate in their own society and culture, with its own rules and norms, and its own hierarchy of status. The bank robber has high prestige, the tough gang leader has power, the brave criminal has respect, the crook who refused to tell on his accomplices has honor, the cool killer has deference, and the loyal gang member has repute. These are all dimensions of esteem through which criminals enhance their self-image. Misunderstanding 3. The mass murderers and war makers of history must have been insane. Hitler or Stalin only seems understandable by denying their sanity. Yet, in their own frame of reference, given their own perception, considering their own morality, and their own sense of self-esteem, then their behavior, to themselves, may have been perfectly necessary and rational and moral. Of course, they also may have been insane. The only point I am making here is that insanity is a possible, perhaps plausible, but not necessary, hypothesis about the monsters of history. Misunderstanding 4. Our most basic drive is for power. That is what we get our esteem from, if anything. If we understand this to mean a drive to dominate others, then there is no such general drive or need. There is some linkage of power to temperament, needs, and sentiments, however. Some people have dominating temperaments. But others are submissive. All people have a self-assertive need, but the desire to be looked up to achieve status, is not the same as a desire for power, although there is some relationship. Power is, after all, also a status. Moreover, since the self-sentiment involves the desire for identity, to be something, to be esteemed, it is also related to power. But a need to assert oneself, a desire for identity, and having a dominating personality, is not the same as a single-minded lust for power.